Alright, so for as a thank you for reaching 1K subscribers and getting my newest short to 500 views, you guys are amazing. I will be giving you guys more about these guys here. So I've actually been thinking a lot about this and I really like the concept, and so I want to show you guys what I've been working on. Alright, so getting right into it, this is Asher. He is a poltergeist and he actually has a action obsession. It's like excitement. He always has to be doing something, and if he doesn't, well, you can kind of see how I'm drawing. He kind of like gets really angry and like desperate and restless. I'd like to think in like this universe Danny like gives him like a fidget spinner so he has something to do. And as you can kind of see in like the drawing here, he has his ghost power and he can make things like fly about, and he can do this subconsciously and on will. He's very much the loudest in the friend group. He's very chaotic and he doesn't really have great morals, if that makes sense. Danny is constantly having to keep the two of them in check, although it's more of Asher that ends up causing the most trouble. Asher really doesn't understand why certain things are considered wrong in Danny's eyes, and for some other things, if he's bored enough, he really doesn't care. This specific attribute really causes Danny some grief when they first meet, and they almost end up not being friends, but they work it out and find understanding. And although you'd be hard-pressed to make them admit it, both Asher and Sino really respect Danny. And because of this, Asher reluctantly agrees on a lot of things for Danny's sake, and he doesn't overshadow a lot of people, even though he likes to. For Asher, I thought it would be more interesting if he was once alive. Although he doesn't have a lot of memories of his life, he does remember his death and the moments leading up to it. As he can recall, he was a sort of adrenaline junkie. He would go around looking for thrills, and he actually had a little group of friends, although he doesn't remember their whereabouts today. And there was this one day where he was out with his friends, and they had, it was late at night, and they had come across a motorbike. It had the keys still left in, and Asher had the bright idea to take it on a joyride. His friends were a bit apprehensive, but he thought nothing of it, and he took the bike, and despite never having actually ridden a motorbike before, he was actually doing pretty well. He remembered it being really impressive, and I'm sure you're expecting the cause of death to be some sort of accident, but this actually goes in a much more interesting direction. As he approaches a road near some woods, he gets shot by an unknown assailant. Luckily, he's only shot in the shoulder, but he ends up toppling off the bike and bolting into the woods. He remembers running until the pain got too intense and he rested by a nearby tree. He must have gotten scratched up by a few branches on the way as he toppled to the ground, and he just looking down at his injuries, he noticed that the bike must have fell on top of his arm because his whole other arm was bleeding out. All he could do was stare at the blood pouring out, alone with his thoughts, thinking about all he could have done in his life. Everything he missed, everything was just rushing to him. And he died a very slow death of blood loss there. He couldn't move. He didn't have his phone on him. He couldn't call anyone, and his friends had no idea where he was or if he'd ever be back. And back to the drawing here, as you can see, like, his ghost version inverted is like a lot like his human version that I'm drawing here now. And you can see cleverly like the bright blue spots that you see on him as a ghost are actually the spots that where he bled out. And it's a little dark, but you know, he is living his best afterlife. Now as a ghost, he can experience everything he wished he could when he was alive. He could go on, experience the thrill, except now because of his obsession, he can never stop. He can never take a break. He always has to be doing something. As you can see, it's a bit of a double-edged sword here, as now he does have a chance to fulfill his dying wish, his last regret. He is kind of like, it's almost like a curse and a blessing. But, you know, he likes to look at the positive sides of it. And he doesn't like focusing on his death. He likes focusing on his afterlife and his new ghost friends, which he would trade the world to hang out with. A fun little detail about him that's actually kind of a result of the way he died is he actually has hemophobia, which is the phobia of blood. Anyway, it is now Sino's turn. Sino is a type of spirit called a daemon, which is actually not a demon, but it is a demonic-like spirit that doesn't inherently have to be evil. I like to think of him as more of a neutral kind of spirit. He has a fire core, and his obsession is actually with noise and sound. He doesn't really like the silence. It makes him desperate to hear a sound other than his own voice, other than his own thoughts. Kind of like how Asher's obsession makes him restless and desperate. It's one of the main reasons why Sino really likes hanging out with Asher, because how loud he is. He's never really alone with the silence. It's one of the main reasons why Sino's always down for whatever antics Asher is up to, is because he has really nothing better to do. And so by the time Danny steps into the picture, the two look like some troublemaking prankster ghosts, really. Once the three of them become friends, Danny offers them better things to do. He directs their energy into more productive and helpful things, less destructive mannerisms, and he actually gifts Sino the MP3 player you can see him listening to on the top there. I really like Sino as a character because of his very specific subconscious mannerisms, and one of my favorite ones of that is his pupils actually change shape. And I don't know if you would call them pupils because they're kind of like just dashes in the middle of his eyes. But as you'll see later, I did a few drawings of his different expressions and the different emotions, and you can see how his eyes would change shape there. Another thing he does subconsciously is really interesting mannerism, actually. The shadow on his face will become heavier to obscure his face more, depending on whether subconsciously he would feel like he would want to be seen. Obviously, if he really didn't want to be seen, he can go invisible, but say subconsciously he was thinking he didn't trust someone he was talking to, his the shadow on his face would grow deeper and his face would be further obscured. Here are the different expressions I was actually talking about earlier. I decided to play around with some different expressions of his, kind of like how I did with Asher a few drawings back. Something you can see here is actually the pupils I was talking about. See on the top there, on the top right, you can see how his pupils get more sporadic, and how on the top left you can see they turn into diamonds, like almost how he's like dazzled by something. And on the bottom left, you can see how they are the heart shaped and very focused and big. And the middle one you can see there, his eyes are like very focused and not as dashed as they are regularly. He's very focused on whatever he's looking at there, whatever he's sticking his tongue out at. And now here I'm adding the shade on his face, and at the end you'll be able to see on the more intense moments his face is more obstructed, or perhaps more moments where he wouldn't like to be seen. Maybe he wouldn't want to show his expression to whoever he's facing.
Are you saying I'm dumb?
Sir, can you spell economy?
Of course. A